I can't believe I'm going to say this, but hello, Dream Teams. Welcome to Series 4, Episode 2 of The Good, The Bad, The Rugby, in partnership with our very good friends at Continental Tires. There's no Alex or Haas this week, but I'm happy because I've been joined by the legend, a centre partner I wish I had, the Welsh wizard, John Fox Davies. How are you, mate?
Good, Tins. We actually recorded the show on Monday down in the Vale at Glamorgan.
In your home.
The home. It was good to have you down in my country, but and then we had an interview with Warren Gatland, which will come on after this. But what do you say? We had to jump on you now today, on Tuesday after the news of Owen Farrell's red card being rescinded. Well, you going to take the lead on this one?
I have to be honest, I am slightly shocked. There are a couple of reasons for that. Is A, the reason that they've given, which is they found mitigating circumstances through the fact that Jamie George, his attempted tackle, has caused a change in height, a change in the ball carrier's height. Now, having watched it numerous times, I think he handed off Jamie George and missed. You are grasping to say that he stumbled a little off the handoff to drop his body height, maybe an inch. It would have been better for me if they'd have said the impact was on the ball and then it rode up into the chin, and the mitigating circumstance was the impact. Most of the impact went through the ball and then slid up, and that's why it was the yellow card. That would have been something I could have sort of possibly bought into. But things that jump out at me, and not just the precedent they've set over certain times. There's a couple of things here. Is they've just implemented a system that everyone was waiting for. Speed up the game, the bunker, take the pressure off the refs, have a semi-anonymous person in a bunker who has 10 minutes to go through the footage and make a call. And now he's saying when you use that review process, it's still wrong. So you've just brought in a mechanism to speed up the game that everyone wanted, and now you've just told the whole world that it doesn't work. It's rugby 101. It's like try and solve a problem and then create another problem by meaning it doesn't work.
Yeah. And it's that consistency. Like they got one right the week before with Xander Ferguson. They upheld that decision, and then obviously this one, and they got it wrong. So you could argue for them that there's teething problems, but you would have thought that the decision when made, we were talking about mid-level bans of 6 weeks, and I thought, it's difficult to really wrap your head around, really.
The big question, the big sort of thing for me is also, you look at Johnny Sexton's ban, 3 weeks for basically abusing a referee, right, or abusing an official. Then you shoot back to Dylan Hartley before the Lions tour, who did pretty much the same thing. Abused an official, and he got 11 weeks. So they're setting a precedent that it's Rugby World Cup year. We want our best players in the world there. We don't want a ban to ruin the Rugby World Cup by not having Johnny Sexton there, not having Owen Farrell there. Yeah. Which is a dangerous thing to say because that's where everyone's going to jump to. I think even if they got him mid-level and then used, obviously England have Richard Smith, KC, who is unbelievable at his job. He's been there since 2003. He's been there since early 2000s with Clive Woodward, and got numerous players a reduced sentence. He's brilliant.
He's worked out retainer then.
That's why you have a KC. And he's obviously done a miraculous defence job on the law and everything else. But it is looking at all we talk about is the good of the players and moving forward. And this is nothing against Faz. Some of them, a lot of South Africans will complain about the hit on Esterhazen back in the day, which, even if you look at the still photos with the point of impact, he's nowhere near his head.
Yeah.
He's on the ball. And it's the ball that makes, a lot of the time, the recoil that comes in. Now, I think a bigger question is there an intent to wrap within that? That would be the main problem of most of Faz's tackles. But, he's a competitive guy and that's where he lives. But how are you going to enforce change on other people if you get something that is even borderline and then you back down of the... I would have preferred them to go, look, we really want him at the Rugby World Cup. Let's do 6 weeks, let's mitigate it. Say there is mitigating circumstances. We think the first impact was on the ball. Let's give him 3 weeks. He'll still be back for the first game, but he gets punished.
Yeah, and moving forward as well, I think that World Rugby has set that standard that if a Tongan player makes a hit, that the same level of mitigation has to come in. And obviously, tier 2 nations don't have the funds to retain a KC like that,
yeah.
And it's on World Rugby now that these are the mitigations, where the first point of contact, they have to stick to this as, this is where we're seeing the game moving forward.
But I think they've also just picked a battle that they didn't need to pick with themselves, because if they'd have given 3 weeks, there's not going to be an uproar. There's not going to be an argument. Yeah, I think everyone goes, yeah, fair enough. He's taking a ban, and they can explain that away. They can even explain that in the way that they've done it. If they want to throw Jamie George in there, they could do a combination of factors. I think the handoff of Jamie George has made him stumble. He's dropped a little bit. Plus, we feel the impact was on the ball, and then it rode up into the chin. They could have used that, so we mitigated that down to 3 weeks, and no one would have really complained. But to go fully in and reverse against the bunker that's had 10 whole minutes to study this. I love that. I think they said in the statement that we obviously there's no blame to the referee in the bunker. So they've had to back him. Well, but you reversed it. So even though you're saying there's no blame, because he didn't have the time, he's had the longest time anyone's ever. One of the longest time anyone's ever had to review a possible head collision and high tackle, and then he's seen it that way, and then you've seen it a different way. It's, and amazingly, they're an Aussie panel. It was a full Aussie panel, which you wouldn't have thought. You thought normally they would have had the daggers out. But it's an interesting. And does it set a precedent now? And that's my other biggest worry is, can you just, in a game that is all about perceptions and people all have different interpretations, and now you're showing that even the guys who are going to run the game, make the legal rulings on it, they've got a different to the referees that they're employing to do the game, and it's just so rugby right now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
let's stir the pot up even more before we even get to the World Cup. And I think, like you said, they probably missed a trick to just, but also a shorter ban or whatever.
I don't know whether you agree with me on Foxy in this. What it does to Faz, like the pressure now, social media wise, people at grounds, when he's walking around the streets, there's going to be, who have you paid to get off? Or he's going to get countless amounts of abuse. It just, I think it puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on him, and builds an animosity towards him. So that, again, that's another way of not protecting a player when you have the chance to. It's bizarre. It's a bit bizarre for me.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because we want to see the world's best players playing on the biggest stage, and it's great that Faz has that opportunity to play in the World Cup, but the pressure he'll have now will be huge coming from external. Like you said, social media will get on his back. People will question every tackle he makes from now on in. I think it's hard on the individual, but he's got to be happy that he still has that opportunity to go to France.
What do you think Fordy's thinking? So he said, yeah, I'm really happy to have our skipper back. And do you think he's like, oh, good.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's probably through gritted teeth, maybe. I don't know. But no, I think it's like, probably as a squad player, you want your best chance to win. And, no squad is stronger missing someone like Owen Farrell. So I'm sure they are glad to have him in and around the team moving forward for the World Cup.
Now that we've had to re-record that and we've got that out of the way, let's head to the interview that we recorded this Monday with the one and only Warren Gatland. We have come to the Vale, your old stomping ground. What's it feel like? Just a familiar, like a warm blanket?
Well, it's like putting an old pair of shoes on, isn't it? It's very comfortable.
That's why we put you by the fireplace.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit disappointed. Normally that is lit, but
this would be the room we
have
the meeting as a backline night before a test match. So we put the fire on, get a few sweets or chocolates in. We'd have a chat about what we're going to do. This was our spot. This was
whilst the walls are shaking from the forwards headbutting each other.
Yeah, or doing something stupid.
We'll play a word game. Is there anything special that sticks out, either good nights after a game or anything about this environment that really? I always remember someone told me a story about. Obviously, this was where Powley drove the buggy from, but As did Sean Edwards have a few interesting nights here after games or not?
He'd always make appearances. He'd always seem to go away to his room straight afterwards, but he'd come down for a few beers. And Sean was always
his trainers and jeans on.
He always had a good look. Let's put it that way.
Always enjoyed a win.
He always enjoyed a win. He always have a great cigar, so I gave him that one. Well, I'm going to focus on the positives for England right now. And I can't believe I actually said that. It's time for our Highflyers of the Week segment, brought to you by our good friends at British Airways. Great to have you on board. You like what I did there?
You only turn left, I know that.
I wish. Anyway, Tins, who impressed you on the weekend? And unfortunately, it has to be an English player.
Unfortunately.
From my one-eyed Welsh perspective.
Yeah. Never seen you with both eyes closed. No, I would say, in my mind, there's two that jump out that need a mention. I think George Ford coming on made a big difference. He played close to the line. I thought he was a step forward and brings into the question again, is who you'd have on the bench if you do say let's put Faz's potential ban out of the picture. Who would be coming on and changing a game, because George Ford did a fantastic job on the weekend. But for me, the high flyer of the weekend was Ben Earl. I think he's had very limited game time through his career for England.
His first start, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he is such an aggressive carrier and constantly a live wire, a nuisance, always wants the ball in hand, very rarely gets stopped on the gain line, because of his footwork and his power. So I thought he sort of really put his foot down and going, look at me, pick me. I know he's had a lot of tough conversations with coaches over the years in terms of why aren't you playing me, and had a very valid point of view, because he's always been dynamite for Sarries.
Yeah. And
I think he's just put his hand up properly to sort of put himself as a starter.
You've put some thought into that, haven't you?
I have.
Wow, fair play. That was good. Yeah. Well, thanks again to British Airways, who brought original people, places, and cultures closer together for more than 100 years.
Oh, thank you for that, Foxy. And now, I'm going slightly out of my comfort zone. I'm going to say that you're pretty much more in your comfort zone with us being here at the Vale. But we're going to bring in Wales head coach Warren Gatland, who's very, very, very kindly taken time out of his day to come and share with us what he's learned over the last 2 weeks and everything through his World Cup camp. So please welcome Warren Gatland. It gives me great pleasure to welcome in Warren Gatland. How are you? How is everything in camp? 2 games gone.
Yeah, we're pretty happy at the moment. Nice to be here. We've probably, I think we're in a good place as a squad. A little bit disappointed with the last weekend in terms of, I think it was a game there for us to win, but we just, the last 10 minutes, we just didn't nail anything and allowed England the opportunity. So there's a lot of learning from that, particularly the young group of guys. But, the first 2 games have got 8 new caps, which is pleasing. And, mentally we're in a good place.
I wanted to get something out of the way because last time you were on, because you are obviously a big fan of the show and you've been on a couple of times. Last time you were on, you mentioned long-term contract 4 times as you were vying for a job. Do you think that being on GB&I got you this job, or were you just sliding into Nigel's DMs all the way through?
You probably got me the job, yeah.
God help us if that happened. You had your first World Cup campaign, 99?
That's right.
Just let us know how it's changed in those, whatever. I can't even do the maths on that.
Well, I think the game's definitely changed from a physical perspective. Early on those days, I can't remember what the squad size was in 99, but sort of went from about 29 or 30 to 31, now we're 33. And that even seems a bit small in terms of you're still compromising. The format's changed a little bit. So, it's going to be my 5th World Cup. So, been around for a while and, had a bit of experience of that. But the great thing about the World Cups, it's the one time as an international coach you feel like you're dealing with a club side. You've got the team together for sort of 3 months. It's like having a pre-season. The detail that you can go into, sort of the fitness work and stuff, and so that's what's I love about World Cup campaigns, and I get excited about it.
Is that as much as what you go for? Yes, obviously you've got to put the graft in and everything like on the field, but is it trying to build that off-field togetherness as much as it is with what you're doing on the field? Yeah,
I think as much as that, the players working hard, trying to create sort of an environment where they're pushing each other. There's a lot of competition within the squad, and that hopefully creates that comradeship that you're looking for and within a group. And I feel like we've got that at the moment. We go, Six Nations was a real challenge for a number of reasons, and the players seem to have put that behind them. We worked incredibly hard in the Vale where we trained for a number of weeks before we went to Switzerland and Turkey. And so there's a lot of confidence. But I think that the one good thing, I know there's a lot made of Reece Webb and Justin Tipuric and Alan Jones sort of retiring, but what's probably happened is that a larger group of youngsters have come through and they kind of feel, as a big group, quite comfortable in the environment, and it's putting some pressure on some of the older players, which is really, really healthy.
Do you think like the camps going away bring the boys together close? Like looking back, I always remember going to Spala, my first one.
That was horrendous, wasn't it?
It was hell. And I think the reason it was hell, it brought the group together. And I think every World Cup prep, you've always pushed the boys to almost the limits. And I think at the end of it, traveling back, the squad has come together much more.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. We're such a small playing nation that we kind of feel that, how do we get in? If we're in the best possible physical condition that we can be in, then we've got a chance against the big boys by making sure that we can play for 80 minutes. And I think that's been a big part of it. And yeah, we've pushed the players incredibly hard in these 2 camps. But you see when they get through it and they're going through some real pain and there's sort of, almost at the edge of the cliff ready to jump off, but they get through it, and it's kind of like a satisfaction that you've achieved something as a group. And
yeah, I think I've jumped a couple of times. You always knew it was going to be hard, but I think I remember you saying in 2010 when we lost to New Zealand that a newspaper article read that Wales, they'll put up a fight for 60 minutes, but then the last 20 you'll be able to run away. And I think you said the next day that will never happen again.
Wales online again.
But boys have paid for it since, because every cab has been the savage, but it's been worth it. It was worth it.
How has the feeling for you changed? Obviously, first and foremost, not saying goodbye to Alan of Wales and Tipuric and the boys, but how they've been such stalwarts for you over your previous campaigurs that you've done, and then having to sort of see them and them not being there for you to rely on, and then obviously with Ken Owen's injury, you're losing another sort of leader within that team. How has that just put the pressure onto these young lads, or?
Yeah, they're relishing it, I think, at the moment, and there's a time for everyone when you've got to call it a day. And we've been through a little bit of a transition through the Six Nations, seeing how some of those older players were and where they were as a group. And, a lot of them have made that decision to retire. And pretty excited about the talent we've got in this group. A few months ago, the cupboard seemed pretty bare, but one door sort of closes, another one opens for someone else, and so it's been really positive in terms of, I think, what we've been able to achieve so far. I've spoken to the player. We haven't spoken about winning. We haven't spoken about results or anything like that. It's kind of been, our first focus was let's just become a really tough team to beat. And if we're a tough team to beat and the players are playing for each other and they're working hard, then the results tend to take care of itself. And we get beaten by a better team in the day because they've played better than us. I'm happy enough with that. I can accept that. But if we're working hard for each other, and I think I've seen that in the last couple of games, I've seen a group of players that are playing for each other and playing for the jersey, and that's all I can ask for. Yep, we're not perfect, but I think it's absolute night and day compared to what we displayed in the Six Nations.
Would you say this, out of all your World Cup campaigns, is this the most open squad or group of players that you've got in terms of who might go? You're not going to pick. I believe you're not going to pick your squad until after South Africa.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're still pretty unsure now. It's the kit man was sort of harassing me today, asking, "Can you give me a list of some names that I can start putting the kit together?" And I said, "Look, we're unsure at the moment. Quite excited about the depth there, and just so for us, as for a few players this weekend against South Africa who have been out injured for a number of weeks, that they'll get a chance against South Africa, but." The conversation with them is that you've got to have a pretty good performance, having not sort of been part of some of the camps and stuff, and go out there and. But that's great for us because you're going to get players who are incredibly motivated to want to go out there and do well.
Are you in a completely different place where you thought you'd be going into this World Cup? Do you feel you've made the improvements? Do the changes in players feel that you've given the possibility to actually make improvements going forward? Yeah,
I'm really excited where we are as a group at the moment. Probably a little bit apprehensive a few months ago. But I kind of didn't realise until reflecting back on all the stuff that was going on, with the union, with the players, with the strike, the BBC documentary, the impact that it had on the players and uncertain of their futures and not being offered contracts and things, and differences of opinion within the group. And is it hard for you as a rugby man to see the players going through that? Yeah, absolutely. And you feel for them and in terms of that. But there were huge implications in terms of, and I'm not sure that everyone sort of understood that if that game against England had been cancelled, that would have cost the union sort of £10 million. There's no doubt in my mind that the four regions would have gone to the wall and
double down.
Yeah, it was a sad day. It was like I couldn't believe we were at that point. Really.
Yeah, and the players weren't on the same page about whether they should strike or not. I can understand and fully support them about the concerns that they had. They'd been told for a long time there were going to be contracts on the table and they were going to be offered, and that wasn't being delivered, and the agreement was going to be done with the union and the regions, and that was taking forever to get across the line. I don't think anyone, everyone needs to take responsibility for all those things. And then when I look back on it, I kind of realised the impact that was having on the coaches. Sort of when I sort of look back on it, and for myself, I didn't coach that well either. I just kind of went, probably need to sit back a little bit and let things unfold, and not try and put too much of a stamp on what you want to, the markers that you want to sort of lay down, and wait till the end of the Six Nations, and we pick the World Cup squad.
You've had a chance to just worry about the rugby. And that's one thing that the environment always was good at, is that you go in and you say, just take care of yourself with the rugby. But then it's probably the first time that external implications have come in and got involved in the group, and you're distracted. And, when you play test match rugby, that pressure is huge. And if you're worried about your long-term security and whatnot, it is going to affect the boys' performance and stuff. And I think having the block of training for the boys to go away, come together, allows them to focus. And we've seen better performances already.
Yeah, I've seen a group of guys playing for each other in terms of that already. The hard work that they've put in has been special. We try and create an environment where there's a no excuses environment in terms of that. And the thing with the Welsh players, in my experience in the past, that they get some self-belief and some confidence, and they just grow an arm and a leg from that. And I've been saying a few things in the media and saying, I think we can do something special. We're on the right side of the draw.
You and Eddie have been chatting away.
Eddie's been saying a hell of a lot more than me. But just subtly just trying to create that belief in the squad that we've put the hard work in. And if I say that I think we're capable of doing something special, and some of those players start to believe it and go out there and deliver on that, then we get through our group. It's going to be a challenge for us. That first game against Fiji, everyone's talking about that. Go back to 2019, and they pushed Australia all the way for 80 minutes, and Australia scored a couple of more tries towards the end of the game to secure that. So that's going to be a tough one first up. So, but you've got to go in there with that self-belief and confidence that you're able to do that.
Have you noticed a lot with younger players now, and that mentality side? You're talking about putting positive reinforcement really into their brains, so they believe in what they're doing, they believe in what they've trained. Do you find that that's more of a modern era thing than the old stalwarts who just used to just try and beat people up, basically? Is that become a real part of your coaching toolkit?
I think the game has changed, and people have changed, and society and social media and all those sorts of things. And you've got to be careful what words you use sometimes, when you're talking to young men or young players these days. And I'm probably not as direct as I might have been in the past and telling people exactly what I thought.
Sounds like this Netflix documentary is going to be boring.
Yeah, you got to be a little bit more. You got to be a little bit more subtle in terms of that. There's a few players do remember, things that I said. I can remember. There was a good story about Tom Shanklin with his 50th, and saying, "You've done really, congratulations on your 50th. You're doing when I was at Wasps and you were playing for Saracens, we used to think you were shit." So, but how much he's improved as a player. But it's probably not the sort of thing you could say to a player nowadays getting his 50th cap. And
I think there's always a place for that in my heart. Just going back to the new players, obviously 2011, which obviously Foxy was a young whippersnapper back in those. Is there some sort of comparison feeling to that with a group of players, and you could use that as a reinforcement tool as well?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some similarities. We'll probably end up picking a young captain when we name a captain, whether we go to co-captains. It's also thinking short term, but thinking about long term as well. Definitely similarities in 2011. I remember. We'd lost the opening game against South Africa 16-15, and I'm still convinced the James Hook penalty went
over that.
It went over and didn't go to a TMO. And then we've got Samoa the next game, and if we lose to them, we're out of the World Cup. And we're down at half-time against a really good Samoan team, and go into the change rooms, and Sam Orban's got the boys, and he just says, "We're not going home." She said, we're not going home. We haven't worked that hard. We haven't gone through that amount of pain. We haven't worked our butts off. We are not going home. And I just sat back and went, wow, I don't need to say anything here. And boys went out in the second half, good performance. I think Shane Williams got a good try, and we've won the game. But that's sometimes how World Cups can be. You could have easily had the wrong bounce of the ball or a decision, you're out. And it was the World Cup. We should have made the final. And so there are a lot of similarities in terms of that, and for us it was a great experience, and probably I think for when we went to New Zealand as well, we were well prepared from understanding all the cultural things that needed to be. We went there and we sang.
Yeah, I got that right too. What are your memories of that? And obviously coming in at that point, and
I think in 2011, like you look back at the camps in Spala, like I still think they were like harder because they were just, it was bleak. The whole thing was just the facilities weren't the best, and it was pretty bleak. Where like, I know the one we went to Turkey 4 years ago, that place was unbelievable. Like it was like a 5-star hotel. But no, I think we were together. We were down the other side of the world. We were obviously, like you said, about the culture. We brought in the singing. Ken Owens was leading the singing, and wherever we'd go,
his blazer on,
with his blazer on, like he was ready to go at any point. And like I think being so far away from Wales made it a lot easier as well. I think we were in our own little goldfish bowl, and I think it just helped us focus on what we could achieve, and we just seemed to gain confidence every game we played. Like even from South Africa, that was it was probably the first time we got close to beating a Southern Hemisphere team. And then that Samoa game, although like they tried to beat us up, and I remember the guy bouncing the ball off Mike Phillips's head when he scored a try, and it literally went like 20 yards off his head, and Mike was worried about his nose.
Is that the size of Mike Phillips's head though?
Well, I don't know. It was. I'm not commenting on that. But like it just after that, I think we played Uruguay then Fiji, and we had so much confidence, and I think it was installed with us from the coaches, and just knowing that we could go 80 minutes non-stop, and that speed and that pressure we could put on teams was such a big factor in us.
Yeah, and if you go to the quarterfinal against Ireland, they were big favourites to win that game, and it was probably the first time we'd gone to the first team to go bit to which all the teams are using now is like a 2 fullback system. Was really to stop Agara from kicking to the corners and playing territory, and that worked really well for us. We changed the 2 wingers over. We'd named them on one side of the field and changed them over late. Played exceptionally well that day, and won reasonably comfortable against a team that was heavily favoured to beat us. So that was a really, really pleasing performance. It was just the confidence that we'd built over the time. Everyone sort of thinks that we were teetotalers on that. I can promise you we weren't. But I think we were quite smart, and we kind of, they were the late games and late finishes, and we put a curfew on the boys to be back in the hotel at 1 o'clock. If you'd finished at the ground and got back at sort of 11 o'clock, you could go out for a beer for a couple of hours, and that came about from the fact that we'd had some Irish friends, girls that were staying with us in Hamilton, and I went and said hello to them and met them and they said, "Oh, we had a great weekend last weekend with the Irish boys. We were out drinking till 4 o'clock in the morning." And I was going, "Oh yeah." And so, whether the Irish boys were drinking or not. And then one of the girls made a comment to me. She said, "Yeah, but you'd wonder how serious they are about the World Cup if they're out till 4 o'clock in the morning." And I went, "Ooh," and it's kind of like, it's just the perception. Yeah. And so the boys, we'd go out for a drink for a couple of hours, come back to the hotel, and the bar would still be open if they wanted to have a few drinks. And we just had it in the bar and kept everything in. And everyone thought we were sort of being saints, and weren't having a drink and stuff.
Well, we were quite lucky. Warby was our front man who didn't drink, so he'd be pushed up in front of the media. Yeah, I had a bar of chocolate, but after the game, but most of the boys had a couple of beers, and it was just that
wise
balance
decision.
Yeah,
wise
exactly.
Decision. Yeah, slightly different. Bring it back to now. So obviously, with 2 games in, you must be pretty happy. Obviously, probably the best team for the majority of the 2 games. Obviously, not happy on the weekend, but as a general rule, do you look at the performances really hard, or do you just know that first couple of games you've blown off cobwebs and
you are blowing a few cobwebs out in terms of the performance and the amount of changes that we've made in the first couple of games. I think that the most pleasing thing for me is that we've scored 4 tries, and England have scored a driven line-out try against us, and
with 12 men.
with 12 men, who were all in the line-out at the same time.
We scored more tries with 12 men.
And I think the pleasing thing for me in those 2 games was our physicality. I think we've defended well, and in fairness to the English staff and some of the coaches have said, they've been really impressed by how physical we've been in those first couple of games, which is it's always something that in the past I've been involved with playing against English sides where they've often brought that pace and physicality, and you've hung in games. You feel like you're hanging on by your fingernails, but they've got you on the ropes, and you just try and stay in that fight for as long as you can. And that was a bit of the mindset for those first two games. Stay in the arm wrestle, stay in the fight, and we were good in the first week, and probably missed a couple of other opportunities, and we put ourselves in a position on Saturday to shut that game down, but. Probably a little bit of inexperience and stuff, and nailing some big moments. We weren't able to do that, and England got back into the game, and all credit to them. But for me, when I sort of reflect back on that, it's those moments or the learning you take from some of those losses. It can be the biggest learning experiences that you can have as a team, and hopefully we will rectify that and be better for that. And that was for me. The big difference, if I look back to 2018, 2019, when we were going through a period, having won the Grand Slam and sort of gone undefeated for a number of games, is that those were the big moments, under pressure we nailed, and that's what good sides do. And we're not there yet, but we've got to learn from last weekend.
I think one thing you always preached was being ruthless, and I think I'm asking was that frustration because a team was down to 12 men and you just couldn't put the final nail in that coffin?
Yeah, I think that was a big thing. And so I went through today and we talked about, what were our comms in terms of communication and this situation, and what do we talk about when we come into a huddle, what were you saying? And the way the game is at the moment, we talk about controlling halfway, and a lot of teams aren't playing a lot of rugby between the two 10-metre lines. They might play 1 or 2 phases, 3 phases at the most, and then play territory. So if you want to move the ball, sometimes the best place to move the ball to catch a team out is from inside your own 22. And I've said to them today, we've got in front. We're in front by 8 points. So what was the communication there? Is if England, depending on where England kicked, do we take the ball? We clean that ruck, make sure we're aggressive, and then we play some, exit well and play some territory? Or did we have the communication that we want a shift option because they're down to 12 men, and let's
two backs off the field?
Yeah, and let's back ourselves to shift in our 22 and see what comes of that. And if we get nothing, we might have a midfield ruck. We've got Jay Roberts with a left foot, but we can play some territory then, or we might open them up. But they're not going to, defensively, they're not going to come quite as hard because the down numbers are. And they might only have 9 or 10 in the front line, probably still keeping a couple back as well. So, I said, did we talk about that option of being ruthless, of shifting and really putting them under some pressure? So those are the sorts.
I suppose that's in your position. That's a positive learning curve because hopefully next time, if you ever get. Don't know what they hope. Well, hopefully you never get down to 12 men again. Yeah. But if you get down to say 13, you can go right. If they're two backs, let's look at working them wide.
And what are options here? Let's make sure we communicate that. And we didn't put ourselves in a position to shift the ball, and we've ended up turning that over and allowing England the opportunity to score from that.
Do you use any of these games to plot your way through the Rugby World Cup now? So obviously you've got South Africa to come, but I've looked at I sort of looked at these 4 games for England and gone, well, the 2 Wales games they're going to be messy because it's dusting off cobwebs, first games, first real contacts. You hopefully come through it. Then I look at Ireland. If you can get a win against Ireland, that's a massive confidence boost for any player. And then Fiji, if you can get that, if you can beat them, you sort of you can look at the opposite group you're going to meet in the quarterfinals and sort of assess where you are as that goes on. Do you look at that first, say this South Africa game, are you looking if we can get a win over them and then we might meet them on a crossover at the semi? Does that give you a mental edge, or do you look like that? I think
it's probably a little bit different at the moment in terms of we're still deciding on our squad, where like 4 years ago we're a pretty settled team and we were pretty much knew what most of that team was going to be sort of leading into the World Cup. So in a much different situation. Looking at England with last weekend, so definitely them going to Ireland. I think they'll try and put out stronger side as they can, and then probably give other players in the squad an opportunity the following week against Fiji. So it's trying not to. We're pretty clear in our mind about the way that we want to play against Fiji without having sort of shown our hand too much. And I think the 2 games against England and the game against South Africa will set us up nicely for exactly the way that we want to try and squeeze them and play them. We know what sort of a threat they are as a rugby team, but I look back on Super Rugby this year, and a lot of those players in that Fijian squad are from that Fijian Drua, and probably the Crusaders had a pretty good template against them in terms of the way that they played, in terms of a long kicking strategy, keeping the ball on the park, defensively playing high. They squeezed them at set piece and kind of broke their hearts a little bit. So there is quite a good template out there in terms of the way that you might want to play against him. But in saying that, they've got some incredibly dangerous individuals that somehow you got to stop as well.
Yeah, you want to limit their ball in too much open space. In terms of, so just going back to the squad in general, has it been hard to plot those combos in key areas, and what do you always plot combos on form, or is it on who you think's going to, who are going to play best together, 9-10 centres for our sort of role? How do you sort of look at what your second row is, your best makeup of your front row? Whatever?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. It's looking for combinations in terms of sometimes it's regional players or club players that are used to each other, that you get those combinations together. It's depending on potentially the way that you might want to play against a certain side. We're quite lucky at the moment. I think we've got some quite varied in the skill set and the differences that some of those players can bring. We can potentially put out a big physical midfield if we want. We've got some midfielders with some good footwork and variation in terms of our back three as well. There's no doubt that we're in so much better condition than we were a few months ago, and that's made a huge difference. It's made a huge difference to us defensively, and like I said, from that physical point of view. It's just getting that balance right, and trying to figure out what some of those combinations are going to be to take us forward.
Has it made it harder, the way the boys have reacted? Everyone's bought into it. Do you think, right, trying to cut this down is going to be...
It has made it really tough. We've got some... and you think about our 10s, they're all different. They've all got different strengths and different experiences, and you got someone like Sam Costello who's... he's definitely going to be one for the future, but he could be one for now as well. He's got a great skill set. He gets the ball through his hands really well. He's really aware of space. He's a lot quicker than people think for not a big man, and he's as brave as hell.
Defensively, he's good as well.
Yeah, he doesn't mind. He doesn't mind putting himself about. He's got a few things to work on his kicking game. He's aware of that. But from an attacking perspective, he gives you something. So all our 10s and 4 10s were really with we've got with Owen Williams and Dan Bigger and Gareth Anscombe, who hasn't played yet because he's had a bit of a knock. They all offer different strengths in terms of what they can bring to the game. So that's going to be a tough selection process for us, and then finding that balance in the midfield.
Going back to 2019, obviously going to that semi-final, you were on your bare bones. How much does that play on your mind in terms of thinking about how you're going to split your squad, whether you're going to go 19-14 or whether you... How much does that play on your mind in terms of... Because I still go back to the game. I so wish that Wales had won that semi, because they were there for the taking, and you ended
but we
up
had no one left. That's the issue.
Literally,
Neil Jenkins was going to play the following week.
Yeah. So how much does that play on your mind? I know you can't plan for injuries and this and that, but you've got...
It's a weird game. Final, sort of semi-final of the World Cup, and before Sam got sent off that first 70 minutes, I'm sitting in the box thinking, we're going to win this game comfortably. I just thought we were going to be in complete control, and we ended up losing 9-8 and still had chances to win the game. But yeah, you do. Can be attritional. We've already picked up a few injuries at the moment in these first few games, and guys at training. So that's the big challenge, Do
you get to manage? Because obviously now with protecting players and everything, contact levels, it makes it harder to get your body. We used to call it body hardening. You have to do those sessions to get used to the knocks and get ready, or you are going to get injured. How hard has it been now with how we plan that? Have you still managed to get those little bits of intense, full? Well, it's bone on bone. The only way you can do it, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's just limited. I've always been a little bit like that. So we talk about level 1, level 2, and level 3 in terms of the intensity that we'll go at the contact level, and level 1 will be into bags. Level 2 is sort of getting in front of bodies, and then your level 3 is
grip.
Yeah, and level 3 is that sort of full on.
3 still touch for you, Foxy.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, and if we go to. We've done a little bit of level 3 stuff, but that was more game scenarios where we had a referee with us and we sort of did 10-minute blocks and things. So, but probably in training, if we're at level 3, it might be a 2 or 3 minute block where guys having 2 or 3 contacts in that time, or a couple of tackles. So you limit that, but as long as I get that sort of regular feel of it, I think that's where the game is at the moment. If you go back years ago, there, if you're playing in France, I think every Thursday was a level 3 sort of full on contact
for about 45 minutes.
Yeah, still touch for you, Foxy, don't we?
Yeah, full on contact session. So we're aware of it. You got to get the balance. We do contact every day, but it's limited to how full on it is. The breakdown's such an important aspect of the game, and your kicking strategy and getting the balance right with that. I feel the way the game is at the moment, it's turned a little bit in terms of being in favour of the defensive team and them getting rewarded a little bit more, and that's probably why you see so much kicking in the game and people taking less risks because of that. But your kicking game is designed around, how do you create space and how do you slow line speed down, or how do you manipulate a back 3 to so that when you do move it, they might not be coming quite so quickly off the line. So it's just trying to get that balance right.
Would you change that? Would you change the contact area, make it a bit more in favour of the attack? I just see. I don't think offside lines are ref that much in terms of, because defences are so flying up. Would you change a little bit what happens at the breakdown to swing it back in the attacker's favour?
Yeah, I'd love that to be the way. I think you want to be able to have the confidence to play through phases, and that if you're accurate, you can keep the ball. One of the frustrating things about the game at the moment is I don't think anyone knows when it's actually a ruck. And we saw a situation in the game last week where someone's taken the ball into a tackle. There's been a jackal situation. He's been cleaned out.
It's a ruck.
No
one can lean over and reach it. I know your frustration.
Yeah, and then the next guy comes and plays the ball, and they get a penalty. And I'm saying, well, was that a ruck form? And then they'll say, oh no, they're on the ground, so it's not a ruck. And I don't know half the time, and I'm sure the referees don't know as well. So,
but you could make that quite simple though. If someone's had a first jackal and then you've cleared them out, that is a ruck. No one can touch the ball.
No one can touch the ball again, and would just give the attacking team a lot more confidence. And I've spoken at World Rugby conferences a lot about this, and saying that it's a game where you want a competition in all areas, but you don't want it favoured too far in, to one aspect of the game. You don't want it favoured too far on attack, and you don't want it favoured, too far on the defence. And I think the defence has got the upper hand at the moment in terms of that, and that's probably why we've seen so much kicking.
I'd also stop people leaning over a ruck because you can't clear them out. So what's the point in that? So, you know, when they, like what you've talked about, then people just sort of make a V shape over it. You can't actually clean. There's no areas to clean. It's impossible. And if you want to stop
And they
people,
look at the ref saying they're holding on.
and then and then they'll put their head up and someone will clear them out in the head, and then they get red carded.
Well, I always talk to the referees about being aware of what tackle selection is, and they kind of look at me a bit funny. And I said, well, if you go back to kind of when I was playing and when rucking was allowed, people made tackle selection on where they were going to end up, and you didn't end up on the wrong side of the ruck because you got an absolute...
Unless you were 2 meters out and you wore the ripped jersey with pride.
Exactly, and you got an absolute shoe-in. So you made a tackle selection. But players nowadays are making a tackle selection, which means that they might end up on the other side, then they roll out, which takes a second or two. I can tell you, a number of years ago, you wouldn't have been there, and that's what potentially created the quick ball. So, I've often spoken to referees about that. Just be aware that people, when they do tackle, can make a different tackle selection to end up, potentially in a much more positive position for the attacking team to be able to create a quick ball.
Quick ball's key, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And everyone's looking to slow it down in the way that some people play like smart or dumb. I've ended you, and they take extra time to roll.
I'm trying to
out.
get out.
Yeah. Oh, look at me. Yeah.
The old rugby league wiggle. Going back to the group, what do you make of your group? Because it is, I think, if you ask most people who are fans of the game, it's an intriguing group because you're going through a sort of not a rebuild, but there's been a change of the guard, sort of young players coming through. Australia, Eddie has come in, is 0-4, but some obviously they got nipped in a couple of games. Fiji with what they can bring, Georgia, and obviously don't want to go back to it, and Portugal, but I don't want to go back to Georgia. Yeah. So I think a lot of people are intrigued how that group can go because there's a little bit of an unknown. What's your feel on the group?
I think for us it's one game at a time. It's the thing about this World Cup is you've got so much more preparation time between games. We've got a 6-day turnaround after Fiji to Portugal, and then an 8-day to turn around to Australia, and then a 13-day. I mean, the previous World Cups, you've had those 4-day turnarounds, which have been a real challenge for the squad. And I'm kind of looking at if we can beat Fiji in that first game, then you go in there and you build on the next game, and then you go into the Australian game with a huge amount of confidence, thinking, we've got a good chance of winning this group. I don't think we would go in there with having sort of any fear of playing against Australia. They've made some interesting selections in terms of only picking one real specialist 10, and probably.
Yeah, what do you make of that, leaving out Hooper and Quaid?
Yeah, I thought it was that's the thing is you're not in the day-to-day sort of inside of the camp and seeing what's happening in training and injuries and stuff and things, and then probably naming a captain sort of from left field as well. So and then Eddie's been talking about smash and grab and winning the World Cup and been pretty bullish about that.
Do you enjoy those interactions with Eddie? Have you had any banter? Do you chat much on coaches chat? Do you chat much?
We don't chat,
mate. What hand grenade are you throwing in today? I've got this one.
Oh, we do take the piss out of each other a little bit and stuff, and have in the past. I've enjoyed his company and stuff. We've been out for a number of dinners and a few drinks and stuff, and enjoy his company. But there's always when you're playing against him, there's sometimes something left field been thrown at you, or a little grenade. I watched a few of his Cadbury chocolate ads. Someone had sent them to me. I don't know if you've seen them. The barber.
Oh no, we need to get on those.
Yeah, you need to see the barbershop one, and there's another one where I think he knocks on the door pretending to do a survey. So I thought, I'm not on social media.
God, it must be a good contract.
It must be good, yeah. So he's something about he's getting a haircut in the barbershop or something, and then they ask him a few questions about the World Cup, and as he's going out the door, says, "How do you think you'll do in France?" And he goes, "Oh, mate, we're not going for the croissants or something." So I thought there's a local barber shop not too far away from here, a good old Welsh boy. I thought of doing a mimic of that as well, and getting him to put it on social media just as a piss take. So it'll probably go viral, I think.
Do you think in a head when you go into like dropping grenades, you think, I'll have a go here today, or have you...
No, I don't go in there. A lot of the things that I say are not aimed at the opposition. If I've been pissed off about something, then I'll say something. I try and be. I've always tried to be as honest as I can be. And if you ask me a question, I'll give you an honest answer. I'll give you an honest opinion. And some people don't like that, and that's perfectly fine. I touched a nerve last week. When I said I thought we were too fit for them, but that wasn't a criticism or trying to have a crack at England. That was a comment that I wanted our players to see so that they believed it. If I was saying it and they start to believe it, then that kind of can have a really powerful difference.
When it gets to the dark, when it gets to those dark moments. Yeah,
it's kind of like, and I look at, and I honestly believe this in 2019, and I didn't say Grand Slam, but I said that if we beat France in the opening game, I think we'll win the Six Nations. And because their first two games were away with France and Italy, and we beat France, then we beat Italy away, and all of a sudden you're on a roll, and you got to, we went out and did that. But so I was making that comment that if the players saw me say that or heard me say that, and I believed it, then if they start to believe it as well, then that can have quite a significant impact. And I remember being at the Rugby Writers' Dinner, and I got interviewed, and that was where I made the comment. And then they interviewed Johnny Sexton later, and because he was Rugby Player of the Year, and they gave him an award, and then they said, "Oh, Johnny, how do you think you're going in the Six Nations?" He said, "Oh, there's no point talking about the Six Nations because Gats has already said they're going to win it." And I went, "Wow, job done." I've already potentially had an impact on one person.
I just remember 16-0 down against France at half time.
Was that chat coming out then?
Yeah, we still could do it, boys. Well, it turned it around, and it does give you confidence. And one thing is that you never felt the pressure from the media, because I think you absorbed a lot of it, and it gave the players, the team, to go out there and just worry about what was important as that's going to play. And I think that was a good quality to have in a head coach.
Obviously now there is this Netflix documentary on the Six Nations, bits and pieces. You've got young players. You had a young captain on the weekend. Yet we've still got really quite powerful coaches that have been around the game a long time. The criticism of Eddie when he was with England, no one ever got to know their England players. How hard is it to balance that in the fact that the players are the future, but you also want to protect them and build their mentalities up, but yet they need that exposure? How hard is it to manage that? Is it something you think about, or because ultimately you want to protect your players at the right time, don't you? Yeah,
it's a real balancing act, I think, with regard to that, because I kind of feel that there's been so much negativity around the game for the last couple of years, and with COVID and clubs going under and those sorts of things, and obviously we had issues. It's kind of like you want to get back to people going along and watching the heroes play. And I spoke a little bit about Marcus Smith, and I think he's an unbelievably talented player, and someone who potentially could play for England for a long time and be that superstar that kids want to go along and wear a jersey with his name on and go and see him and stuff. And we need that. We need that in the game, and we need that. And we had that
above the number, not below the number.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. We had that here with George North when he burst on the scene, and so we need to create that. But you feel for players, with social media, and then they turn on things, and the criticism they get from sort of keyboard warriors, people they don't know, and it can be absolutely brutal. And we've experienced this in the past when players like Alex Cuthbert's left Wales and Reece Priestland have left Wales just to get away from the fishbowl that's been here, and you just absolutely feel for those people. So I don't have social media, not on social media. I'll be too afraid to look at what some of the people say about me. But
that is the key to social media. Never go below the line.
Yeah.
Use it for what you wanted for.
Yeah.
Just wanted to go back to when you first picked this guy, and what were your first impressions of him? And you can feel free to be as honest as you like. Did you always know he was going to be that guy
well, I
for
think
the future?
he'd come through the 20s and stuff, or
was it purely your coaching?
He was a lot bigger then. He had a big legs and a big ass and stuff and things. And so
I couldn't run though. That's the thing.
He was quick, left-footed. I was that game you played against Australia. I was kind of laughing a bit because I often think so we played in the stadium and Foxy's played and things were happening pretty quickly, and one of the things as a coach, and I always say, you can't coach experience, and Tins, you know that, it's kind of like, and I always talk about being fast pitches, and people say to me, what do you mean by fast pitches? I say, the first time you play an international, the pitches are going like this, and the next time they go like that, and then the next time, and then the more times you play, the clarity starts to come, and you start to see things in front of you, and you can only experience that as a player by being out in the middle, and I think that day against Australia, Foxy was like a rabbit in headlights because things were happening so quickly. But
I didn't know where that was coming or going, to be honest. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, it's just a different level completely.
Yeah, but the thing is, you pick some players and you know that they're going to learn from that and are going to get better, and he was definitely one of that. And sometimes you get it wrong. You think a player might be good enough to play international rugby, and you realise actually they're probably just a good club player. But with Jonathan, he knew the quality in him and knew the competitiveness in him, that he was going to be, one of the top players in the world, and he proved to be so.
Well, thank you for your time. I wish you the very best against Australia and Fiji, because do us a favour so we don't have to meet them. Hopefully we'll both win our group. Hopefully we can somehow avoid meeting Australia, because Eddie will probably do us over, and we'll see you in the final.
Cheers. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jonathan.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
So that was lovely to catch up with him. A little change around, just the two of us now. Which gives me the perfect opportunity to drop a quick note from our friends at NordVPN, who are offering Good, the Bad, the Rugby listeners an exclusive deal, Foxy, I'm telling you.
Talk to me.
You used Nord when you were abroad?
I have used Nord when I was abroad.
If you are heading across the channel in September and you want to be able to watch all your favourite TV shows and sport back home, or from anywhere in the world if you're just on Hollypops, with NordVPN you can switch your virtual location to a country of your choice and you can enjoy the event. Foxy, I know you like to go away a lot, actually.
Yeah.
You have gone away a lot recently, haven't you?
I have, yeah. So
come on, list them all again.
List them all. So I think I went Mexico, Amalfi Coast. I did do Glastonbury. That nearly killed me.
And they say that the money's not good in Welsh rugby.
At the moment, currently.
This is all saved from, this is the cause, not the not living with it. Just remember, you'll even get a discount on your plan and an extra 4 months for free. And there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to NordVPN/goodbadrugby. The link's also in the episode description box. So please make a visit. It's always worthwhile. Anyway, back to Gats. What's it like? What was it like? What do you feel when you sat in the same room with him? Obviously, you've spent so much time with him over there, but it's the first time from a not being in the squad type of opinion. How does it feel to sit around and listen to him speak?
Yeah, quite weird. He seems all right. Like very similar to what he was before. Before he left, and yeah, it's almost like you when you go back to school and you see your headmaster and you still call them like sir. Like, and then they're like, no, don't call me sir. It's like Warren. And you're okay, yes, sir. No, it's that sort of thing. It's weird, but no. Look, I think he picked me pretty much all my Welsh career, and he was a big part of my career. So he seems all right, and he seems pretty comfortable where the boys are, which is always good to hear. And even though I had "please pick me" on my pad. Yeah, he didn't pick up on that.
I could see he was not looking across in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Do he always seems quite honest and open, but then do you hear sort of certain phrases where you go, "I know what that means. It doesn't mean what he's saying."
I just think he's always been open enough to say what he says. You know, he's very, very honest, and you ask me a question, he give you an answer. And there's always a method to his deliveries, and I think he's so calculated. And I always said Gats would be a very good poker player because he reads people well. He'll understand when a player might need like a kick up the arse, or he always used to go to me, or that young centre looks good there, and he knew that would get a reaction like, right, I can prove him wrong. Or some players just might need a cut in and say, oh look, you're doing well, you're a world-class player. So he always reads the room really well, I find. So yeah.
Just going back to sort of dilemmas, do you think he's got many dilemmas in his squad right now? And does he know who's going to be his captain to take him forward? Because obviously Jack Morgan was so impressive in that and led the team well, but he's not that. He's a bit like Warby. He's not that outgoing guy. Where do you think he'll lean on that?
I do think Jack is probably the front runner. I think the composure he's shown in that game, you know, England-Wales test match at home in Cardiff, it was, you know, a huge amount of pressure around the whole thing. And, you know, I can't remember exactly how many caps Jack has, but he's pretty inexperienced on the international stage. But he's shown that composure that he can deal with performing, you know, his day job as a 7 and then lead the team extremely well. So I think for me, he's probably the front runner. We don't know what Dewi Lake's injury is. Another one may be Adam Beard, but you do feel with him potentially having such a big job on the set piece and the line out, an added weight of the captaincy as well. Is that too much for a player? So because I know when Alan Wynne was captain, you know, I think Beardy ran the line out. So if he was to be named captain, does that, you know, obviously shift the line out to the other second row? So there's, I think, a few dilemmas he has, but I think I get the impression that he will go Jack Morgan as captain. The way things lie at the moment.
And then, did you manage to catch anything over the rest of the weekend? Scotland, France?
I did watch it. Yeah, an entertaining game. You know, that was like
slightly different.
Slightly different, yeah.
So where we are.
Yeah, I think it was. All the rugby was played in that game, not in the Wales England.
But also led to problems. Obviously, Entomac's out now for the tournament with an ACL.
Yes. You said Cyril Baez.
Cyril Baez looks like he's got 4 or 5 week tear in his calf, I think. So, you know, that is how you can't ever describe that, can you? What to be in. Do you remember how you approach warm-up games, especially World Cup warm-up games? Do you think about what could possibly go wrong, or were you very good at just being able to block that out and go, right, we've got to go hard? And
you do. It's all probably in the back of your head, but I think you've got to fully commit yourself to a test match because it's such a pressure cook, and you need to be fully engaged in the role you have to play, your execution level. So when the whistle blows, you're not thinking about it, and then maybe at the end of the game you're like, oh, made it through, thank God. Right, next week,
little roll of your ankle, it suddenly flies forward into your brain. And you go,
your groin gets tight last 10 minutes. Like, oh no, I got to get off now. But no, I think you have to be fully committed. I've seen a couple of articles of players saying like they're just hoping that they don't get injured, and for me, that it's not the right way of going about it, because are you preparing yourself physically and mentally to go into a test match against, you know, some of the best teams in the world and deliver a performance? I do understand it, but you have to be you're not doing yourself justice or your teammate then.
I think it does open up. I think Scotland looked very good as well, so it's opened up that group as a real better than what I thought they would. I thought France, I think, led in the first game by 18 points and this game by 17 points, and they've come back in both and looked dangerous in both. And I think that really offers a different viewpoint for that sort of South Africa and Ireland group.
I think that when Scotland get confidence and play with tempo, I think they're one of the best teams around. That they seem to enjoy that fast-paced tempo. I think you can tell that Finn and either Ali Price or Horn, the nines, they enjoy playing at a pace of like that's uncomfortable for a lot of players. These tight 5 forwards hate a 9 who runs and looks for quick taps and always keeps you on your toes. And I think that's Scotland enjoy that.
What's good for them against, because obviously they fly straight out of the blocks into South Africa in the first game, is Finn Russell is the perfect type to play against that press that South Africa come with. If you remember back to the Lions, he was doing crossfield kicks whilst playing close to the line, and he'll hold on to that ball to the last second. So if anyone gets ahead of their opposite number and someone runs off him from an angle, they'll cause a few issues, I think. And
with the way South Africa defend coming up so high, like Finn loves to hold the ball a long time. He does have the ability to throw that long looping pass as well. I think he relishes that pressure where he just reacts to what's being played in front of him. And I think if he's given too much time, it's almost like he's got too many decisions to make. But when things are in front of him really quickly, that's when he reacts, and that's when he's at his best, really.
So Foxy, thank you very much for coming back to your old stomping ground.
Stomping ground or cell, that's what I used to see it sometimes. Ooh. Yeah, it was especially during
said
COVID.
That now, he's not here, didn't you?
Well, yeah, true. Yeah, he's gone.
I love
like
you,
Gatso.
It's all lovely.
He's such a nice guy,
pick me,
actually.
Pick me. Written on
shouldn't have brought my boots here with me.
Well, obviously, we're going to spend a fair bit of time out there, and if all goes to plan, England, Australia, Argentina and Wales will face off across 2 days in the Stade de Marseille in October. We will be on board the GB&R cruise. They call it Epic. It will be.
But there's limited availability left, so head to infinityrugby.io now to secure your place. Price includes food, drink, official match tickets, luxury accommodation and match transfers. Don't miss it.
That, to me, reads like a bargain. And just a little reminder, we are going to be heading out just 2 days after the Rugby World Cup final. We're going to be heading across the UK for a theatre tour for the ages. So if you're on a World Cup come down, this will be your perfect pickup. So book your tickets now.
We're heading to Guildford, London. We're in Swansea on November 2nd, in Cardiff on November 3rd, Edinburgh, Northampton, Reading, Oxford, Leicester, Birmingham, Westcliff-on-Sea, Exeter, Plymouth, Newcastle, Nottingham, Manchester, and Bath. Oh, good luck. Expenses there.
I can't believe you memorised all that. It is the World Cup after party. So everything we can't tell you about the podcast, we'll be saving up and telling you about then. Please come and join us. We promise a lot of lols. So please don't miss out on the cruise. Don't miss out on the tour afterwards. We have been the good, the bad and the rugby in partnership with our very, very good friends at Continental Tires.
The Good, the Bad and the Rugby is a folding pocket production produced by Shari Kilgallen and Tom Edwards.